Amen. Our scripture reading this morning comes from Paul's. Well, it doesn't happen as often as you think it would. Dropping a communion tray. That's all right. That gets us out. Okay, got your attention now. The scripture reading this morning comes from Paul's second letter to the church in Corinth, 2 Corinthians, verses 4, 3 to 6. And the scripture reads, "And even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. In their case, the gods of this world have blinded the minds of unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For we do not proclaim ourselves. We proclaim Jesus Christ as Lord and ourselves as your slave for Jesus' sake. For it is the God who said, 'Let the light shine out of the darkness,' who has shown in our hearts to give the light of knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." And God add his blessing to the reading of this word. When I was a teenager and would go on vacation with my parents, we would usually head up to the mountains, into Rocky Mountain National Park, and my parents loved to hike, and so we would go to get on the hiking trails, and they would tell me, "David, you can go at any pace you want. You can speed ahead, you can lag behind, but there is one rule that you should never break. Stay on the path. Stay on the trail." You see, they were experienced hikers, and they knew how easy it is, even for the most experienced, when they get even a short way off the trail, to become lost, to lose their way, and become almost impossible to find. Well, the trail we are on, the path we are on as individual Christians and as the church, is actually very well marked. It is a clear path for us to follow, and it has been clearly proclaimed to us through Jesus Christ and through the Apostle Paul here in our Bibles. Our path is simple. Our goal is simple. Our mission is simple. That doesn't mean it's easy. No, it can be very difficult. But the path is quite clear. Our path is, our mission is, not to proclaim ourselves, but to proclaim Jesus Christ. To proclaim Jesus Christ in all that we do. Don't let any opportunity pass us by to proclaim Christ. We do this quite simply by showing Christ's compassion, Christ's justice, but most of all, by showing Christ's love. We can do this anywhere. We don't have to wait. We do it here at church. We can proclaim Christ's love every moment of every day. We can do it in every interaction. We can do it with those we love and are close to at home. We can do it with friends. We can proclaim Christ's love at work and to strangers as well. In fact, as Christians, we're even called to proclaim Christ's love to those who don't particularly like us much at all. And how are we to respond to that? How are we to respond to hatred? We respond by showing Christ's love. And in that way, we proclaim Jesus Christ. Now, it is a simple path. It is a clear path. And yet how easy it is to get off that path and to forget this. That is the point of it all. That is why we are here, to proclaim Christ's love. Ministers can do this. How easy it is as a minister to realize that you preached a whole sermon or taught a whole Bible study or led a whole meeting or a whole Sunday school class and forgot in doing that to proclaim Jesus Christ. To proclaim it ourselves in my actions, but also to proclaim the good news and to proclaim Christ's love and to remind others we need to do the same. All of us every day, willing to show Christ's love to others. I like the story of the minister who called the children up at the children's home. And up they came and gathered with him on the chancel steps, and he began with them, saying, I want to describe something to you. I want you to tell me what this thing is. It is about this size. It's furry. It climbs up and down trees, and it eats nuts. Well, the kids all raised their hands to shout out the answer, but one child shouted it out. He didn't raise his hand, he just shouted it out. What is it that's furry, climbs trees, and eats nuts? And he shouted out, he said, Jesus? And the minister was, no. He said, why would you say Jesus? I was trying to describe a squirrel. And the little boy said, well, I just didn't think that you'd go to the trouble of inviting us all up here just to talk about squirrels. I'm sure the minister was going to get around to Jesus. He was starting with a squirrel. Jesus was going to be in there somewhere. And the good news, God's love, was going to be in that message somewhere. But the child's point is excellent. What is all this for? This beautiful sanctuary, this wonderful campus. What is all our time that we are giving right now? What is it all for? The money that we give. What is it all for if not to proclaim Jesus Christ? How easy it is to forget. How easy it is to get off the path of proclaiming Christ. And to do exactly what our scripture reading today warns, to maybe proclaim ourselves instead, because that's an increasingly popular thing to do in our world, to proclaim ourselves. We have got technology now that allows us to proclaim ourselves loudly and to the whole world, and it is a great temptation to proclaim ourselves. This isn't just an instruction to us, this verse from the Apostle Paul. We proclaim not ourselves, we proclaim Jesus Christ. It is also a warning. Did you catch that there? How he spoke of the gods of this age? The gods of this age blind people to Jesus Christ. Blind people to the good news. And it's true of the world. The people who do not see Christ, who do not feel Christ's love, who do not see it, do not experience it, they have usually been blinded by something else that has become their ultimate concern in life. And they do not see Christ's love. They do not feel it. And you know what? We run that same risk. It's so easy for us to become blind to what we should be doing. Proclaiming Jesus Christ at every single opportunity. And instead, focus on the temporary, the mundane, the transient, the things that will not last. That is the gods of this age. The things that will not last. And we find ourselves giving so much time, so much attention to these things that will not last that we find ourselves worshiping them. Instead of worshiping God, instead of doing that one thing we are called to do, proclaim the love of Jesus Christ. This is actually one of the church's greatest sins. All churches fall into this sin from one time or another, and it is always our temptation, drawing us away from opportunities to proclaim Christ in all that we say and in all that we do, and instead focus on the mundane. The temporary. I like the story of the minister who got up in the pulpit one day and during his sermon started to describe a dream that he had had the night before. To his congregation, he said this to me. He said, in my dream I stood in a grassy field, and on the edge of that field was a drop-off, a great cliff, and there was the edge right there at the field. And I looked over the edge, and it was bottomless. It was black. I couldn't see the bottom. It was so far down, in such a dangerous area. And then I noticed there were groups of people, and they were all walking slowly toward the edge, as if they didn't see it at all. People from all walks of life. There were families. There were single people of all ages, adults, and children, all different folks, and all walking there toward the edge. And then suddenly I realized the reason they were walking that direction is they were blind. They couldn't see the edge. And they came closer and closer. And then I heard their cries as they fell off and fell over, and then more and more started heading toward the edge of the precipice. And I wondered, why doesn't anybody stop them? I couldn't in my dream. I couldn't move. I couldn't cry out. And then I looked over and I saw that there was a peaceful little scene among all this horror. It was one group of people who were gathered, sitting under a tree. And they were working diligently at picking daisies and making them into daisy chains that they could put around their neck. Every once in a while, the cry of someone falling off the cliff would reach them, and they would seem kind of annoyed by it all, and they would quickly get back to their work. Whenever someone in the group got up to go try to help, the others would pull them back and say, no, we need to be called specifically to go help. And besides, we don't have a plan of action yet to help. And besides, we're right in the middle of making these daisy chains. It wouldn't be fair if you left us here and made us do all this work while you did that. Well, you see, as a church and as individuals, we must not allow the gods of this age, the temporary, the transient, to veil our eyes from our need to proclaim Jesus Christ, to proclaim His love. Instead, to think about things that are important for this age and concentrate on them instead of concentrating on the eternal message of Christ's love. The message that the people who are blinded cannot see. The people who are deaf cannot hear in this world. And yet we are called to continue to cry out to them, to call out to them, and never be distracted by the gods of this age, and never be distracted by proclaiming ourselves. Well, I was at, many of us here were at a wonderful event last Sunday here at the church, our annual chili cook-off. And the chili was wonderful as always, and the drinks, everything was just great. But the thing that stood out that evening was the program that our youth put on that night. Now, our youth had the opportunity to make this program about themselves. They had the great chance to proclaim themselves because it was all about their gifts and talents. But instead of proclaiming themselves, each one of them, before they told about some God-given gift that they were thankful for, read a scripture that described that gift. They thanked God for the gift that they had been given. And we prayed together at the end of that evening. And we thanked God for the opportunities that these blessed children, young people, have had to nurture those gifts and to make them grow. So easy, so tempting it would have been to proclaim simply themselves. But instead they chose to proclaim Jesus Christ. Well, how do we do it? How do we proclaim Christ? Well, here's another story about a famous scientist, KHCC. From the 19th century, he was a disciple of Charles Darwin, and people called him Darwin's pit bull. He defended Darwin in debates, and he also happened to be a great agnostic. He did not think much of the church, and didn't think much of organized religion at all. And one day, this agnostic scientist was out with a group of his friends on a little vacation, and on Sunday, many of them were heading off to church. And the scientist, Huxley, asked one of his friends, why don't you stay here and tell me why you're a Christian? And the man thought, I don't want to do that. I mean, this guy is an expert debater. He's going to tear me to ribbons. But then Huxley knew what he was saying. He said, no, I don't want to debate you. I want you to tell me what Christ means to you. What is your faith all about? So the man did. He skipped church that day, this good Christian man, and he spoke of Christ's guiding hand in his life. He spoke about how Christ inspires him to help him and demands, wants him, pushes him to be better, to do better. But most of all, he spoke to the scientist, the agnostic, about Christ's love that he could feel in his heart and that he could share with the world. At the end of it all, Huxley said, I would give my right hand if I could believe that. No, it's no great story of conversion. The agnostic wasn't made into a lifelong Christian, but you see, that wasn't that Christian man's job. His job wasn't to convert him. His job was to share Christ's love with him. And that is what he did by focusing on that love. Now that's what I would encourage us all to do. As we are out in the world and people ask us, which happens from time to time, ask us about our faith, ask us about our church, focus in on proclaiming Christ's love. How that love makes you feel, how that love changes you, how that love causes you to want to serve, to want to give. And when you talk of the church, talk of the love of God that you experience here. That is what we do. We proclaim God's love, and hopefully this is a place where anyone can come and feel that love. There's another way, though, to share Christ's love, and it's even simpler. To proclaim Christ. It has to do, I heard a story about St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis was going to go into town in order to preach, he said. He said, I want to go to proclaim Jesus Christ to this town. And he picked one of the young monks to go with him. And the young monk was very excited that he'd go in with Francis into town to proclaim Jesus Christ. And they walked into the town, and Francis greeted everyone along his way. And he heard about their concerns, and he spoke with them. And they did that all day long. They walked from place to place, and they talked to those that they met along the way. And then they walked back to where they were living. And the young monk was so disappointed. He said, Francis, I thought we were going to proclaim Jesus Christ. And Francis said, oh, that's what we did all day. By showing people Christ's love. Believe me, they were watching us. They were looking out for us. They were seeing how we reacted to them. And he said this. He said, it is of no use to walk anywhere to proclaim unless we proclaim everywhere that we walk. We have the chance to proclaim Jesus Christ each and every day in how we treat others, in how we respond to need, in how we treat the stranger, yes, but also in how we treat those closest to us. The opportunity to proclaim Christ by sharing Christ's love freely and openly. We wonder, how important is that really? How important is it that I feel Christ's love when I'm checking out at the grocery store, that I show this kind of love to others when I meet them along the way and when I drive down the street? Well, you never know how important it may be to show that love. One last story in today, and I remember hearing it some time ago, a story about a man, back in the 100 years ago or so, living in a cabin in the woods, deep in the mountains, in the middle of a wilderness, but he was right off the main road there, a road that led 5 miles into town. Now, every side, all around for hundreds of miles, was wilderness, but the road led right there, and it was just 5 miles, so he got to get into town every once in a while. Not as much as he would like, because he wasn't in good health, and he had trouble getting around. He wasn't able to get around as well as he used to be able to get around, but he liked sitting on his front porch because riders would come by, and they would share the news with him about what was going on. One evening, just before dark, a rider came by and shared with him the news that a young child had become lost from the town, lost in the woods. And there were search parties out looking all over for this child. And the man was so distressed to hear this that he longed to go out and help, as he might have once been able to do. Go out and search and look in all those places the child might be, especially now that night was coming and he knew how scared that child would be. But he knew that he would slow up any search party that he went with, and he might actually have to be rescued himself, and that wouldn't help the child. So instead, once darkness fell, he thought, well, I can at least go out on my porch, and I can look around my cabin and see if maybe the child is anywhere close by. It's not much. So the man went out and he took his lantern and out on the porch, and he looked. The lantern was a good lantern, but the light didn't even reach the road that was right there in front of his cabin. But he stayed out there for a while, and every time there was a noise in one direction or another, he'd move back over. In that way, he'd shine his light to see if he could see anything. Finally, after an hour, he gave up, and he went to bed. The next morning, he woke up, and as he was sitting in his front porch, a rider came by with the joyful news that the child had been found. She told her mother which child hid. She had become lost just because she thought she knew her way back home after being out in the woods, but she'd gone the wrong way. And by the time she realized that she realized she was completely lost. She kept going, and everything seemed to look less and less familiar, she said. And then it started to get dark, and she became truly frightened, and she sat down and she began to cry. Well, she had just about determined to stand up and to head off in this direction and see if she could find home, when she happened to notice a light coming from this direction. She saw it, this light in the distance, and she began to follow it. She followed it for an hour, until quite suddenly and unexpectedly she emerged from the trees, and she was standing on the road that she knew led back to her town. She walked along that road, and that's where the rescuers found her, making her own way home again. Now, the man in the cabin, he thought it was such a little thing to go out onto that porch, to hold up that light, to search just right around his cabin. How could that possibly make a difference? Yet that simple act helped this one who was lost to find her way home again. We may not have the opportunity to display some great act of courage for our faith, some great act of self-sacrifice for our faith, but we never know when the act, so simple, so easy, of holding up the light of Christ's love, can shine a light that some poor lost soul can see. Someone who found his or her way back home again. Because you showed Christ's love and compassion just when they needed it the most. Let us bow in prayer. Loving God, thank you for giving us such a simple, straightforward calling in this world to proclaim your Son, Jesus Christ, by showing and telling of his love in all that we say and do. Loving God, this is simple and straightforward, but it is so often difficult, and it is so easy for us to get off track and to miss wonderful opportunities. Lord, guide us then along this path each and every day. Help us to see your light so that we can then share it with those who are lost. It is in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. If you were looking for a church home today, I would invite you to come forward during the singing of our